The storm sealed the church on a Sunday night. Snow packed against the doors until the stained glass groaned under its weight. The world outside erased to white. Father Callahan lit every candle he had left, their flames trembling in the cold nave. The generator had failed hours ago. No heat, no phones, just wood, stone, and God. When the confessional screen rattled, an icy wave of fear came over him. "Bless me, Father," a voice whispered. "It's been a long time." Callahan swallowed. "Go on." The voice was wrong, too dry, like leaves crushed underfoot. Still, he listened. That was his job. "I died in February," the voice said calmly. "Do you remember?" Callahan's hands tightened around his stole. He did remember. The parish burial during last year's freeze. An unmarked grave when the ground wouldn't thaw properly. "This is a sin of deception," Callahan said. "You're cold, exhausted, hallucinating." The screen slid open a fraction. A face leaned close, blue-lipped, eyes milky and focused. "Father," it said softly, "you buried me frozen." Callahan stumbled back. The candles dimmed as if the room itself inhaled. Another knock sounded, then another. Confessionals he hadn't unlocked creaked open down the nave, one by one. "Bless me, Father." "Do you remember my name?" "You said prayers too quickly." Voices layered over each other, dry and eager. "We were hungry when we woke," one said. "And cold," said another. "So cold." Callahan backed toward the altar. "You're dead," he whispered. "You don't need warmth." They finished together. The confessional doors burst open. They stepped out slowly. Parishioners he'd known. Buried, frozen, thawed wrong. Their skin was split and darkened, veins black beneath translucent flesh. Their mouths worked constantly, chewing nothing, saliva stringing from cracked lips. "We can hear the blood," one said, smiling. "We smelled it during communion." Callahan felt it then, the pulse in his neck, loud as a bell. "Confession," a woman crooned, "before we eat." They circled him, movements stiff but purposeful. "I absolve you," he sobbed. "I absolve all of you." "That's not what we want," they said. Hands grabbed him. Cold fingers sank into warm flesh. Teeth pressed against skin, trembling with anticipation. "Warm blood remembers," a voice murmured reverently. "It keeps us awake." They bit. Callahan screamed once. The sound steamed in the air, then broke apart into wet gulps and prayer fragments. By morning, the storm ended. Rescuers found the church empty and warm, candles still burning low. In the confessional, the screen rattled softly. "Bless me, Father," a voice whispered, and something hungry waited to listen. The pipes started singing on the third night of the storm. At first, it was just noise, metal contracting, a low knock that echoed through the walls of the apartment like a heartbeat. The building was old. Everyone knew that. When the power failed and the heat went out, Raymond wrapped himself in blankets and told himself the sounds were normal. On the third night, the noise said his name. "Raymond," the pipes whispered, the sound traveling through the walls, through the floor, through the cold that had settled into his bones. "Sweetheart." His breath fogged the air. He sat up, heart hammering, listening. The word lingered, warm and familiar, like breath against his ear. His mother had called him that. She'd died 12 years earlier, heart failure, alone in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Raymond hadn't been there. The guilt still lived in him, deep and permanent. "This is what hypothermia does," he told the empty room. "Auditory hallucinations." The pipes knocked softly in reply. "Sweetheart, you don't have to be scared." The voice was perfect, not loud, not echoing. It sounded close, intimate, like she was standing just on the other side of the wall, wrapped in one of her old sweaters, arms folded the way she used to when she worried. The apartment was so cold his fingers burned. He pressed his hands into his armpits and rocked slightly, listening. "I'm just trying to help you," the voice said. "You're freezing in there." The next morning, frost coated the inside of the windows. The temperature in the apartment had dropped even further, but the voice sounded stronger, warmer. "You can trust me," it murmured through the radiator. "I know how tired you are." He ignored it. He rationed his food. He moved as little as possible. He survived. By the fifth night, the knocking became rhythmic, gentle taps, like someone asking to be let in. "You don't have to fight anymore," his mother said. "Open the windows. Let the cold out. Let me in." Raymond laughed, brittle and cracked. "That's not how cold works." The pipes groaned. "You were always stubborn," she said fondly. "You always thought you knew better." The voice began telling him things only she would know. The name of his first dog, the lie he told her when he dropped out of college, the way he cried in the bathroom after her funeral, pressing his face into a towel so no one would hear. Each memory was warm. Each word softened the edges of the cold. On the seventh night, the pipes began to shake violently. "Please," the voice begged. "I'm so cold." Raymond crawled to the window. Ice sealed the frame shut, but he chipped at it with shaking hands until the seal cracked. Cold air poured in, savage and immediate. The voice sighed in relief. "That's better," it said. Raymond slumped against the wall, shivering uncontrollably. The pipes fell silent. In the morning, the rescue crews found him alive but unresponsive. Severe hypothermia, frost lining his lungs. When he finally exhaled in the ambulance, his breath fogged the air and carried a whisper with it. "Sweetheart." The EMT turned pale. The pipes in the apartment are still warm. They knock sometimes, late at night, when the building is quiet, waiting for someone else to listen. The power went out at 6:42 p.m., not all at once. First, the lights dimmed, as if the lodge exhaled. Then the hum of the heaters stuttered and died, leaving behind a silence so sudden it felt aggressive. Outside, the storm erased the windows. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else swore. Phones came out, screens bright and useless. No signal, no bars, just the time ticking forward like an accusation. The caretaker, a thin man named Rourke, stood near the front desk with his hands folded, as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Backup generator failed," he said calmly. "Happens in cold like this." "How long?" a woman asked. Rourke hesitated, just long enough to be noticed. "There is," he said, "one room with heat." That was how it started. They gathered around the fireplace, though it was cold ash and stone. The lodge sat high in the mountains, too far for plows, too far for help. The storm had closed the road hours ago, trees down, drifts taller than trucks. "The boiler room," someone said. "Or the kitchen." Rourke shook his head. "Not those." "Then what?" He looked at them, one by one. "Room 317. A pause. "It's an older system," he continued. "Independent, still holding temperature, 72 degrees. A murmur rippled through the group. Relief, then suspicion. "Why only one room?" a man asked. Rourke shrugged. The lodge was built strange. They didn't like that answer, but the cold was already creeping in, sliding beneath coats, stiffening fingers. Breath fogged the air. "Rules," Rourke said. "One person at a time. No more than an hour." "Why?" "Because," he said, gently but firmly. "That's how it works." The first to go was Elaine Porter, a retired school teacher with purple gloves and a heart condition she mentioned twice before anyone asked. "I won't take long," she said, teeth chattering. "Just to warm up." Rourke led her down the hall. The others listened to their footsteps fade, then to the storm clawing at the building. Minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. When Elaine returned, she was smiling. Too much. Her cheeks were flushed, her gloves gone. She moved carefully, as if the floor might break if she stepped too hard. "Feel better?" someone asked. "Oh, yes," she said. "Very warm." "What was it like?" another asked. Elaine tilted her head, considering. "Comfortable." "That's it?" "Yes." She sat by the fireplace and folded her hands in her lap. She didn't shiver again. Not once. After that, people lined up without speaking it aloud. A man named Curtis went next. Then a young woman, Hannah, who had been crying quietly since the power died. Each came back changed. Curtis wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Hannah kept rubbing her arms, even though she was sweating now, her jacket open. "Please don't ask," Hannah said when someone pressed her. "Just don't." The temperature in the lodge dropped steadily. Pipes groaned. Frost traced the windows from the corners inward, delicate and invasive. They argued about time limits, about fairness, about whether they should all just crowd into the room together. "No," Rourke said. "It doesn't work that way." "What happens if we do?" someone snapped. Rourke's mouth tightened. "No one has ever tried." That settled it. By midnight, the lodge was below freezing. Elaine stopped talking altogether. Curtis sat rigid in a chair, hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white, then blue. Hannah whispered to herself, over and over, like she was reciting instructions she couldn't afford to forget. When it was Mark's turn, he didn't want to go. He was 36, practical, not prone to panic. He had layered clothing, a decent sleeping bag. He told himself he could wait. But the cold isn't something you argue with. It seeps. It convinces. When his fingers stopped responding properly, when his thoughts began to slow and snag, he stood. "I'll go," he said. Rourke nodded, as if he'd known Mark would. Room 317 was at the end of the hall. The door was plain. No heat seeped through the frame. No sound came from within. Rourke unlocked it and stepped aside. "An hour," he said. "No longer." Mark nodded and went in. The door closed softly behind him. Warmth wrapped around him instantly. Not blast furnace heat, not dry, artificial warmth. This was different. It felt like being indoors on a childhood winter night, like blankets fresh from the dryer, like standing too close to someone you trust. Mark exhaled a laugh he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The room was simple: bed, chair, lamp. No vents, no heater. The air itself was warm, impossibly so. He sat on the bed and closed his eyes. That's when the voice spoke. "Too cold out there," it said. Mark's eyes snapped open. The voice wasn't loud. It came from everywhere. From the walls, from the warmth itself. "Who's there?" he demanded. "Someone who remembers," the voice said. "You can rest. I'm only here for an hour." A pause. "Yes," the voice said. "That's what they always say." The warmth deepened, sank into his bones. His muscles loosened. His thoughts blurred pleasantly at the edges. "Don't you want to stay warm?" the voice asked. Mark stood abruptly. "I'm leaving." He reached for the door. The handle was warm, almost hot. Behind him, the voice sighed, not in disappointment, but in concern. "If you go back cold," it said, "you'll bring it with you." Mark froze. "What do you mean?" The warmth shifted. It pressed closer, not touching, inviting. "They can't survive without this room," the voice said. "But the room can't survive without you." Mark's breath quickened. "You don't need me?" "I do," it said softly. "Everyone leaves something behind. Heat, time, pieces." Mark yanked the door open and fled. He returned to the group shaking. "You okay?" someone asked. Mark nodded too fast. "Yeah, just don't stay long, whatever you do." They waited for him to say more. He didn't. The cold didn't feel as sharp anymore, not just on Mark, on all of them. Elaine's breath fogged now. Curtis flexed his hands, surprised. Hannah stopped whispering. "Is it warmer?" someone asked. No one answered. By morning, they understood. The room didn't just give heat, it redistributed it. Each person who entered came back warmer, but the lodge grew colder in strange, uneven ways. Patches of frost formed inside the walls. Breath steamed in one corner of a room, but not another. The warmth had to come from somewhere, and it wanted to be shared. When Curtis volunteered to go back, said he needed to, it took 3 people to stop him. "You already went," Mark said. Curtis looked at him with hollow eyes. "I didn't stay long enough." That night, the storm howled like an animal denied entry. They took turns, shorter, more desperate. Some stayed too long. Those people never came back. Rourke marked their names quietly in a ledger. When the storm finally broke, when rescue crews forced their way up the road, they found the lodge intact, cold, empty. Room 317 was a perfect 72 degrees and empty. Everyone in the lodge disappeared. They were never seen again.